My fellow people of the former British Southern Cameroons, the people of the Cameroons, and all over the world who are interested in our programs, I think I have some interesting information to share with us today. I would like to examine how the independence of the two Cameroons was compromised from the very beginning. You know, when you see a big river, it may look very large, like the Mississippi here in the United States or all around the world. You have the Rhine River in Germany. You go to Cameroon, they talk about the Senegal, or you have um, the Manu or the Menchum River or the Mezam River. When you see a big river, it starts from somewhere where it just comes from up the ground and starts flowing slowly in a small stream before it becomes a big river, taking along with it other streams to become a very large river that goes into the ocean. So when you see the modern nation of Cameroon, it will be interesting to go back from the very beginning when that country was being formed, what truly happened. And I want to demonstrate to us how the independence of La République du Cameroun was compromised by the French, and also how the true independence of the people of the former British Southern Cameroon was compromised. And today, both countries are not free. They are not independent. They are subjugated to French dictatorship, basically, an authoritarian rule using individuals that call themselves presidents who are barely puppets of the French, like Ahijo was and like Biya is. So I want to take us back, and I would like to present a picture here to show a citizen of La République du Cameroun called André Marie Mbida. So if you look at this picture, when, as I said in previous programs, after the Second World War, the United States and Russia insisted that colonial powers that had countries under their control as colonies, predominantly Britain and France and other European countries, must, must grant those nations independence. They must prepare them towards independence. And the French did not want to grant independence. Even the British as well did not truly want to grant independence. So they connived behind the scenes how they will continue to control those countries economically and bring up puppets, people that look like the locals, that will sit there calling themselves presidents or prime ministers, but doing and serving the interest of the West. I have had in other programs information about modern imperialism, how they control third world nations and to keep them poor. So I want to go back and show how this was done to keep La République du Cameroun and eventually also Ambazonia subjugated under the influence, in this case, of the French. So what happened was that the UPC, as soon as they learned that La République du Cameroun would become independent, the UPC party became very active in East Cameroon and was wanting total independence. The French pursued them and literally seeking out to kill all the leaders of the UPC, as you've heard about Nyobe and Neswandi and others. And they had some individuals that they were collaborating with. And this person you see in the picture here was the person who was working with the French government in his mind, thinking that he was trying to achieve that independence that was promised at the United Nations. Now, this person's name is André Marie Mbida. He is a true iconic son of La République du Cameroun. He was born on January 1 of 1917 in Edingding, Cameroon. He was a statesman, nationalist, and a politician who played a pivotal role in the country's fight for independence. Mbida's educational journey took him to the minor seminary in Akono, where he studied from 1929 to 1935, and later to the major seminary in Volier in Yaoundé from 1935 to 1943. He was an exceptional student, excelling in mathematics and Latin, and even became a teacher at the minor seminary. Mbida's entry into politics began in 1952 when he was elected to the Territorial Assembly under French rule. He later became the first Cameroonian to be elected member of parliament at the French National Assembly in 1956, when La République du Cameroun was not yet free. His leadership skills earned him the position of Prime Minister of Cameroon, the French Cameroon, from 1957 to 1958, making him the second African-born Prime Minister in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, in parallel, let me talk about Southern Cameroon here. Remember that the Southern Cameroons under Ndele and our forefathers, which included Foncha and Muna and others, they benevolently separated themselves from the Enugu House of Assembly in 1954 and went back to Buea, where they were practicing independence and voting and counting truly and exchanging government, which went from Ndele to Foncha. So this is what was being done here in La République du Cameroun, where the French controlled everything, and André Marie Mbida was able to collaborate with the French and tried his best to see how he could be working with the colonizers to achieve independence for East Cameroon. And he became prime minister from 1957 to 1958. So Mbida was a strong advocate for Cameroon's independence, for La République's independence, pushing for an end to French national rule. The French did not like that, and so they pushed him out and forced Ahidjo in. He played a crucial role, this Mbida, in designing the country's national emblems, including the flag, the anthem, and the motto of the country, Peace, Work, Fatherland. Mbida opposed the idea of a single political party controlling the affairs of the state, believing it would lead to dictatorship, which happened under Ahidjo in 1966. They abolished all political parties and imposed only the CNU political party that was Ahidjo's and made a national party. And since then, it's been basically the same. The so-called CPDM, which was the CNU mutated into what is called Cameroon People's Democratic Party in Bamenda, has remained the single party controlling all the affairs of life and politics in Cameroon till today, even to the point where you notice how they stole elections in blatant daylight, obvious to the whole wide world, and they are not even ashamed about it. So despite his achievements, Mbida faced challenges, including imprisonment. So after the French had succeeded to remove him and put Ahidjo, in spite of the fact that he had been the first prime minister in La République du Cameroun, under Amadou Ahidjo, led by the French, he was imprisoned from 1962 to 1965 for opposing the government's single-party rule. He remained a vocal critic of the government of Ahidjo until his death on May 2nd of 1980. Mbida's legacy is that of a courageous leader who fought for La République's sovereignty and dignity. He is remembered as a true patriot and a champion of democracy. So you realize here that while the French concentrated on killing all the genuine, authentic individuals seeking the independence of La République du Cameroun under the UPC party, even those who were collaborating with La République and trying with France to see how they can, in collaboration with the French, achieve some level of independence for La République, the French still humiliated, removed him from office, imposed Ahidjo a stooge, and then imprisoned him until he died in disgrace. This history is not very much revealed in La République du Cameroun. And what happened after imposing Ahidjo on La République in 1959, then the French progressed towards the independence of La République du Cameroun that was supposed to take place on January 1 of 1960. And a week before this happened, the French signed an agreement with Ahidjo how they would control all the affairs of La République du Cameroun. That is what the French wanted. They wanted a stooge, somebody that they will listen to them and do what they asked them to do. And so they got Ahidjo and replaced Mbida with Ahidjo to serve their interest. And I wanted to read here the hidden agreements that the French signed with Ahidjo a week before they acquired their independence. And in future programs, we will bring secret agreements that the French have signed with Paul Biya to continue to control that country until the end of this century. By then, most or everyone would have died. except for some few children who will be born today who don't know these facts. And by then, the French will hope that we will not even know how to fight for our freedom, and they will continue to do the mischief that they have been doing. But let me read here the colonial agreement that the French signed with Ahidjo after removing Bida, before they granted a fake sham independence to La République du Cameroun. Now, number one, La République was obliged to pay colonial debt as benefits of colonization. That means they're saying that La République benefited from the fact that the French had colonized them, exploiting all their resources and bringing what they consider to be development to their country. And so La République must pay that debt. That is to say that the newly independent states must reimburse the cost of the infrastructures built by France during the colonization. We are always looking for the details of the cost, the evaluation of benefits, and the payment conditions imposed by France on African countries. So La République has been paying money to France for France claiming to have produced or done some level of development in La République du Cameroun. Number two, the automatic confiscation of national financial reserves. That means the French automatically confiscated all the money that La République du Cameroun has. That is to say that African countries must deposit their financial reserves with the Bank of France. Thus, France has been guarding the financial reserves of 14 African countries since 1961, which included Benin, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and including La République du Cameroun. Thus, the governance of monetary policies remains controlled totally by the French. And this was signed by Ahidjo, and they imposed the French franc on La République du Cameroun. So, number three, the right of first refusal of any raw or natural resources discovered in the country. So the French made an agreement with Ahidjo that any natural resources discovered in Cameroon or La République du Cameroun would belong to the French. And La République could only claim that they could use it for themselves or sell to other parties if the French said they were not interested in it. So all the natural resources belong to the French. Ahidjo signed this a week before their so-called independence. That is to say that France has the first right to purchase all natural resources of the land of its former colonies. It is only after France has said, I am not interested, that any African country is allowed to look for other partners to buy or use for themselves. Number four, priority to French interest and companies in public procurement and public tenders. That's why all development roads were under Razel and the roads got bad. So any development must be awarded to French companies. In the awarding of public contracts, French companies have priority over tenders, even if African countries can get better value for money elsewhere. As a result, in most of former French colonies, all the economic levers of the countries are in the hands of French expatriates. So it doesn't matter whether it's in industrial development, like I talk about Razel that was supposedly constructing roads, or in medicines like selling drugs, medications for patients. They all have to come from France. Any equipment, any utility, things that are used must all come from France. You're not allowed to take from any other country. Number five, exclusive right to provide military equipment and train military officers of the colonies. That means that France alone will control the military, at all levels, so that's the police, the gendarmerie, and the army, and train them, and they must use French equipment. Number six, the right for France to deploy troops and intervene militarily in the country to defend its interests. So France has the right to intervene in any country to defend its interests if it was threatened. Under the so-called defense agreements, which they renewed with Biya in 2009, attached to the colonial pact, France has the right to intervene militarily in African countries and also to permanently station troops in military bases and installations entirely managed by the French. Number seven, the obligation to make French the official language of the country and the language for education. French becomes obligatory, which is the reason why La République is doing everything to destroy the English language that we inherited when we were controlled by the English, and doing everything to force us to speak some French and to speak French. But even then, they will not succeed. An organization for the French language and the dissemination of French culture has even been created. It is called Francophonie and has several satellite organizations. These organizations are affiliated to and controlled by the French Minister of Foreign Affairs to make sure that French culture is propagated all across Africa, and in this case, La République du Cameroun. Number 8, the obligation to use the franc CFA as the money in those countries, which will be printed by France for French benefit. Although this system is not shared by the European Union, the French colonies are forced to use the French franc. Number 9, the obligation to send to France an annual balance sheet and report of the state of reserves. To no report, no money. That's why Biya had to go to France to give a report of the so-called national dialogue that they held in 2019. That is to say that the director of the central banks of the former colonies, they must present a report annually, every year, in meetings of the ministers of finance in the former colonies to France, so that France will know exactly how much money they have and see how it's used and control it. Number 10, renounce any military alliance with any other country unless authorized by France. So most of these countries only have military alliances with their ex-colonizers simply because France forbade them from any other military alliance. Even when some of them come to the United States, it's under French permission. Number 11, no obligation to ally with France. The obligation to ally with France in the event of any war or a global crisis. If there's any war, they expect the Francophones to ally with France, to go with France and do what the French want, which the French were using to say that they have a weight in the United Nations by claiming that the African countries are for them. More than 1 million African soldiers fought to defeat the Nazis, the Germans, and fascism during the Second World War to deliver and save the French. Germany literally marched into France and took over and controlled the French country using the Vichy government, and Charles de Gaulle ran to Britain for his own personal life, safety, and protection. And it was only after the French were liberated by the United States, fighting with others, including Africans, that Charles de Gaulle came back and was making all these agreements here. So now that France is militarily linked to European Union, NATO, and the United Nations, Africa will be de facto committed to side with France in the event of any third world war. That's what they expect. So it goes on and on, but basically you see the agreement that Ahidjo signed before they had their so-called independence from France. Now when we were debating about the independence of the Cameroons in the United Nations, and Ahidjo was speaking on behalf of La République, Ahidjo was not a free man. He was chained, totally controlled on a leash by the French with these agreements. And so when Ahidjo was speaking in the Decolonization Committee of the United Nations and said that the coming together of the two Cameroons would be basically one of federation where they will respect the language and also the cultural form of government of the children of the former British Cameroon, Ahidjo was lying. The French were using Ahidjo's mouth to tell lies, to convince us to come, so that after we would have joined them, then they would just finish us off. Like Biya said, they would deal with us within 2 weeks. And now it's gone 9 years and they have not been able to finish us off. And they will never finish us off. So now, coming to the issue of the former British Southern Cameroon, like I said before, the British had said that the former British Southern Cameroon is a treasure trove. We produce so much, not only to take care of our needs, but we were also supporting the Northern Cameroons that is now in Nigeria, because they did not have enough resources. We had more than enough resources in the former British Southern Cameroon. And even after we joined La République du Cameroun, the former British Southern Cameroon, or Amazonia, was producing and produces over 60% of the GDP of that country. Without the former British Southern Cameroon, they will starve to death. Without the resources of the former British Southern Cameroon, La République du Cameroun will die. Just like France said, without Africa, France will be relegated to a third world nation. La République du Cameroun also will be relegated to a starving nation without the former British Southern Cameroon. So, in our case, the British realized that our forefathers were very educated, industrious, and were fighting for our independence, and they did not want to grant us that independence because of the treasures of the former British Southern Cameroon. So they connived, and in previous programs, I've demonstrated how they gave the leaders of the northern Muslim bloc of the northern Cameroons one each a Land Rover and £100 to convince their citizens or their indigents to vote to stay with Nigeria that the British will control. And with us, it was a little bit difficult because we were educated and debating and had even practiced democracy since 1954 when we left Enugu. So Andrew Cohen, who represented the British, was the one speaking on behalf of the British in the United Nations. Our forefathers had agreed that we will have total independence from Britain as a free, liberated nation in Africa, which they didn't want. And Andrew Cohen told a lie that the British Southern Cameroon was not economically viable to survive by itself. Yet, the former British Southern Cameroon is larger in size than Equatorial Guinea and many other countries, even small ones like Gambia and many others that we can name around the world. The former British Southern Cameroon has more than enough than many other nations and can do very well. But they lied and deceived and forced our forefathers to choose whether to stay with Nigeria that the British will control or to stay with La République du Cameroun that the French will control. And behind the scenes, the British agreed with the French that if we voted to stay with La République du Cameroun, then La République du Cameroun will pay the British £200 for their investments and developments in West Cameroon during the time of colonization that the British controlled us on behalf of the United or the League of Nations and later on the United Nations, being our forefathers as a trust territory. And so this exchange of money took place when the elections occurred. And so the debate was, as you know, Endele wanted us to stay with Nigeria and Foncha wanted us to go to La République du Cameroun. These two options were compelled upon us by Andrew Cohen, by the British. And so I will show later on as we move forward in another segment, in a video, how Foncha was speaking after this decision had occurred where they were compelled to either go to Nigeria or to La République du Cameroun. And so they weighed the options. And Ahidjo was speaking before the Decolonization Committee of the United Nations and made several promises where he said that the coming together of the two Cameroons literally will be such that the two countries will be separate, will be respecting each other's form of government, what they inherited from the colonial masters. And then I'll read here what Ahidjo promised, and you realize how Ahidjo was telling a lie. So in 1961, Ahidjo assured the people of the Southern Cameroons, today Ambazonia, that they will maintain, that we will maintain our autonomy and our identity with the practices of governance that we acquired from Nigeria. These are Ahidjo's words. The two territories will be united, but they will maintain their respective institutions. The Southern Cameroons will keep its own administration, its own parliament, and its own laws. This was Ahidjo's speech at the United Nations Decolonization Committee. Remember that Ahidjo was being controlled by the French. So the French allowed Ahidjo to be deceiving us there. Number two, we have promised, Ahidjo said, and we solemnly reaffirm and swear that the institutions of the Southern Cameroons will be respected. We will not annex the Southern Cameroons. That was on February 10 of 1961, before the plebiscite. Ahidjo went further. The union between the two territories will be a federal one, with each territory maintaining its autonomy and institutions. This was Ahidjo before that same United Nations Decolonization Committee, before the plebiscite. We will respect the cultural and linguistic differences between the two territories. The Southern Cameroons will maintain its own educational system, its own legal system, and its own administrative system. February 10, 1961, by Ahidjo. The Southern Cameroons will have its own government, its own parliament, and its own laws. We will not impose our institutions on the Southern Cameroons, by Ahidjo in 1961. We are not seeking to annex the Southern Cameroons, Ahidjo lied. We want a union based on equality, mutual respect, and mutual benefit. This was before the UN General Assembly in 1961. The union will be a voluntary one, and the Southern Cameroons will be free to withdraw from it if it so chooses at any time. We will not use force or coercion to maintain the union. We will create a federal state where the two territories will be equal partners. The Southern Cameroons will have its own prime minister, its own ministers, and its own civil service. The union will be based on the principles of democracy, liberty, and justice. We will respect the rights of all citizens, regardless of their origin of language. We will promote economic development and social progress in both territories. We will work together to build a prosperous and happy future for all Cameroonians. This was Ahidjo before the General Assembly of the United Nations, before the plebiscite in 1961. The Southern Cameroons will maintain its own judicial system, its own police force, and its own defense force. We will not impose our security forces on the Southern Cameroons. We respect the cultural heritage of the both territories. We will promote the development of both English and French languages in our countries. And it went further and further, and it was on the basis of this that the people went on to the plebiscite and believed that we had a better option with La République du Cameroun than joining Nigeria as a territory. And so you will watch this video when they were interviewing them after this debate in front of the United Nations, and you will hear some information from Ahidjo and Muna. Let's begin the video, please. And Foncha, sorry.
Africa attached to Nigeria. Population 1.5 million. The problem? 19 Cameroons, also in Western Africa, attached to Nigeria. Population 1.5 million. The problem? 1960 has been set for the date when the French Cameroons becomes an independent country. This has been settled and agreed upon. But in the British Cameroons, the issue is not so clear. This territory has been administered in conjunction with Nigeria, which itself is to become independent next year. The northern part of the British Cameroons wants to join with Nigeria. In the southern sector, opinion sharply divided. One group wants to join the French Cameroons, the other, Nigeria. In this conference room this morning are representatives of both points of view. One of them is Prime Minister Ahidjo of the French Cameroons. He has brought his interpreter with him this morning. I'm going to ask the question, and the interpreter will in turn ask Dr. Ahidjo. Would you give us your view on the problem which is currently before the General Assembly, sir?
Est-ce que, Monsieur le Président, vous voudriez leur donner votre point de vue au sujet du problème qui, à l'heure actuelle, est débattu par l'Assemblée générale?
Actuellement, il est question des deux Cameroun, sous tutelle française et britannique. Bien entendu, je suis les deux questions avec une grande attention, mais l'on comprendra que j'attache l'importance primordiale à la question du Cameroun français. Des résolutions sont déposées sur le bureau de la 4e commission et la commission déposée par les États-Unis, Haïti, l'Italie et d'autres nations ont reçu notre adhésion. Et j'ai l'espoir que cette résolution sera votée par la 4e commission et par l'Assemblée générale.
The Prime Minister says that, of course, he is here to follow the debate on both the French and British Cameroons, but it is understandable that he's more interested in the fate of the French Cameroons, of which he is the Prime Minister, and he says that various resolutions have been submitted to the 4th Committee, and he hopes that the resolution submitted by 5 nations, including the United States and Italy and Haiti, New Zealand, will receive the majority vote in the 4th Committee.
Thank you very much, sir. Another very important voice to be heard from is Prime Minister J.N. Foncha of the British Cameroons. How do you feel about this situation, sir?
I wish to thank the members of the United Nations television branch for having given me this opportunity to express my impression of the United Nations General Assembly convened purposely to hear Cameroon's future. Before I leave for the southern Cameroons, I wish to express my deepest appreciation for the kind and friendly dispositions of everyone I have met at the United Nations. This opportunity has given me to thank them all, not only for myself but also for my honorable colleagues. The friendly atmosphere which characterizes the day-to-day business of the United Nations is in itself a contributing factor to the solution of the problems confronting the countries of the world. The solution of the difficulties delaying the progress of independence to the Cameroons as a whole has made good progress in view of the fact that the distinguished representatives are understanding what we want. The consideration to postpone some of the points presenting difficulty is a move in the right direction in view of the fact that before the 14th session assembles, more important information will be available. The course of the debate so far is encouraging because it is aiming to a kind of independence which will pave the way to the unity of Cameroon as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both, gentlemen. Cameroons, also in Western Africa, attached to Nigeria. Population, 1.5 million. The problem? 1960 has been set for the date when the French Cameroons becomes an independent country. This has been settled and agreed upon. But in the British Cameroons, the issue is not so clear. This territory has been administered in conjunction with Nigeria, which itself is to become independent next year. The northern part of the British Cameroons wants to join with Nigeria. In the southern sector, opinion sharply divided. One group wants to join the French Cameroons, the other, Nigeria. In this conference room this morning are representatives of both points of view. One of them is Prime Minister Ahmed Ahidjo of the French Cameroons. He has brought his interpreter with him this morning. I'm going to ask the question and the interpreter will in turn ask Dr. Ahidjo. Would you give us your view on the problem?
Okay, so I was happy to present this video so that our people can see the embryonic stage that our people were going through in trying to actualize our independence. Remember that our forefathers from the British side had left Enugu in 1954 and went to Boya, practiced true democracy that exchanged hands from Ndele to Foncha, and Foncha here, now having become the new prime minister in 1959, was speaking in the United Nations on our behalf. And having been compelled by the British to choose either to join Nigeria or La République du Cameroun, Foncha won, and so he's speaking as he's looking forward to us joining La République du Cameroun. Now you see Ahidjo here. Both men were only 35 years old. It's important for us to recognize this because, you know, you have these octogenarians in their 90s, literally killing Cameroonians to continually stay in power while they stay in bed and using diapers and urinating in bed. These people were in their 30s, 35 years old, making major decisions. And so those were the challenges that these young people had as they were interacting with these whites and living in a very developed country compared to theirs. You saw how our people were struggling there on the farm. So when you went to Britain and you saw Westminster Abbey and you saw all the developments that were there, they would think that maybe Andrew Cohen was saying something right. But when they had an ulterior motive, basically to confiscate our resources. So having been deceived that we were not viable, that we don't need to be independent by ourselves, we must join Nigeria or La République du Cameroun, our people thought Ahidjo was honest when he promised that when we join, we will be two equal states of equal status, respecting our cultural heritage, in language, in education, in politics, and mannerisms and economic activity. And as you know, Ahidjo was totally controlled by the French, by the agreements that I read ahead of time. So Ahidjo was not a free man. However, Foncha was a little bit more free here, except that they compelled him to choose to join La République du Cameroun or Nigeria and not having the independence that they had wanted when they met in Manfé before. So now he's speaking a little bit freer than Ahidjo. Ahidjo is under a leash by the French. And he says, well, he's watching the situation and that he would prefer, he has more interest in what is going to happen in French Cameroon. And as I read before, he said things or made promises what will happen after we join them while being controlled by the French, and that was basically falsehood. And so after we would have now voted in good faith, believing the things that Ahidjo said in the plebiscite of February 11th of 1961, our people voted in supporting Foncha to join La République du Cameroun, believing what Ahidjo promised, that we had a better deal than staying in a small region of Nigeria. And so we joined La République du Cameroun. And it's interesting to note that our forefathers, that means Foncha and Endele, Muna and Joa, all the political leaders of different political groups, went combinedly to Ahidjo and admonished him that we, the children of the former British Cameroon, we don't want to be bound by the French agreement that Ahidjo had with the French before we came to join them. So our forefathers rejected that bondage. That means the French had no hand, should not have any hand into our resources, controlling our wealth, or even taking control of our money. But as soon as everything happened, and like we have said in previous programs, how the French, I believe the French and their collaborators succeeded in killing the United Nations Secretary General that died in a plane crash over the Congo, for he had gone to help African countries to acquire independence. That was Dag Hammarskjöld from Norway, and he was an honest and sincere Secretary General of the United Nations, and he was going to leave the Congo and go to Buea to prepare our forefathers to meet La République du Cameroun to craft the constitution that will put the two countries together as a federation of two states of equal status. And that plane crashed. And so when they went to Fumban now, you notice that the United Nations that owned us was not there, and the British that administered us on behalf of the United Nations were not there. And so only the French accompanied Ahidjo, and our forefathers went there. And they tried to womanize them, as I said in some other programs, by putting them in nice-looking bungalows with beautiful Fumban women, alcohol in the fridges, hoping that they would drink and be drunk, womanized, and not be thinking. If you look at the symbol of the Fumban Palace, you see a snake, two-headed, strangulating somebody as a circle around the neck, and then a spider that literally delivers the deadly poison to kill you. So they were hoping that our forefathers would not be thinking, and they will finish us off in Fumban, and will just accept basically the French version of what La République had as their constitution, which was basically a leash to control them, as France had signed with Ahidjo 1 week before their so-called independence. Anyway, our forefathers still managed and uttered some statements and said that the form of the meeting of the group will be a federation that should never be tampered with, of equal status, and that will never be changed. They also introduced some few things Ahidjo reluctantly accepted. Now, the agreement had to be approved by our parliament, which never occurred in Buea. Ahidjo rushed to his rubber stamping parliament in La République du Cameroun and immediately approved whatever they said, which basically means that there is no treaty of union between La République du Cameroun and Ambazonia, or the children of the former British Southern Cameroon, because our parliament never agreed to the treaty that came, or the so-called constitution that was agreed in Fumban. And also, our father, the United Nations, did not represent us there, and the British that administered us on behalf of the United Nations was not there. Therefore, that so-called agreement is null and void. And so, till today, there's no treaty of union. And the two countries are not one. They are well divisible and will be divisible and must be separated, and has occurred. And it's just a matter of time for people to see how this one baby is separated from the mother. Just like a baby is separated from the mother, La République du Cameroon will be removed, will be separated from Ambazonia, and the umbilical cord will be cut, and we will be independent, free, grow, and be strong and vibrant, and do very well in the world. So I wanted to share this with us today. So we see what happened in the early stages, embryonic stages of our attempt to come together to form a union. And you can see the young men there, all born at the same time, 1924, Fonchar, 35 years old, Ahidjo, 35 years old. But Ahidjo was under the control of the French, having been used to displace Mbida that I showed before, who was trying to advocate for true independence for his country. And they humiliated him, locked him up in prison later until he died in humiliation. And then eventually, Ahidjo actually tried his own little best to see how he could bring some development to the Cameroons while he was acting as president. The French using him to literally dismantle our own governmental structures he promised to maintain. And then, as he tried to bring a balanced development to the country, the French didn't like it, and they literally pushed him out and put Biya in. And deceiving Ahidjo that he was sick and couldn't rule. And so Ahidjo agreed, believed them, and then they put this Biya in, who had been cooked in the kitchen and prepared to serve the interests of the French. This week, we heard about Anicet Ekane, who was killed by La République du Cameroun after this so-called fraudulent election that they just held. This Anicet Ekane was a student who studied in France as well. And he was active within the UPC that was advocating for La République du Cameroun's independence. During those times, Biya, who was a student in France in the 1950s, preferred to be a secret service agent for the French, which he has always been till today. So he serves the interests of the French. He refused to work with other children of the former of La République du Cameroun for their own independence. And he said a candidate they just killed came back home and has been advocating within the UPC for true independence for La République. He watched the killing of Nswanji in Bafoussam in 1971. During that killing, there were also 3 people who were killed by firing squad in Bamenda, just by the so-called Liberty Square. And as a child, I was able to participate by watching the firing squad. They brought these 3 people from upstation, tied them on a pole, tied their eyes with a piece of cloth, put their coffins by the poles, and soldiers were ordered to march, point the gun at them, shot them in the heart, and when their heads dropped down as they were dying, the military guys came and put a gun in their ear and shot through to make sure that they were done. And then they put the dead bodies into the coffins and carried them to the cemetery in Bamenda after the end of Talongla. And I watched this as a child in 1971. There were 3 people who were shot. During that time, Nswandi was killed by Ahidjo, similar firing squad in Bafoussam, and Anicet Ekane watched it. The one that La République just killed yesterday, in jail. And he has been active, advocating for the independence of La République du Cameroun. And of course, the French have been using Biya to steal elections, rig elections, and pretend that he has won. And Frundi crushed him in 1992. Kamto finished him off in 2018. And Ekane, each time attempted to run but couldn't win. And he supported Issa Chiruma this time, who finished off Biya and crushed him in the polls, to the amazement of the whole wide world. And so they picked him up and locked him up, took away his medicines, his oxygen, maltreated him and tortured him to death. That's what La République does under the guidance of the French. You don't hear the French saying anything. They just stay silent, but they agree and consent to the theft, to the stealing and confiscation of the elections, and the killing of people who oppose French rule in La République du Cameroun. That has been the modus operandi of La République du Cameroun since the 1940s, since they told them that they want La République du Cameroun to become an independent nation. And they have done everything to make sure that they maintain it under control, killed UPC militants, replaced those who attempted to have some level of independence and maybe resisting French control by replacing Bida with Ahidjo, and then eventually replacing Ahidjo with Biya, and Biya has served them very well. Those agreements that I just read to you that Ahidjo did 1 week before their independence on January 1, 1960, that Ahidjo signed in 1959, Biya renewed it in 2009. That agreement was supposed to be renewed after 50 years, and Biya renewed it in 2009, and it is even worse. He sold the whole country to the French, and so they allow him to do anything. He can steal elections as long as he allows the French to control all. That's why when they attempted to construct what they call a seaport in Kribi, Bolloré went and took it, who is a French businessman. He controls Ivory Coast and all the French business activities in the coastal lines. So he just went and took that. They cannot not give it to the French. And if he tries not to, the French will kill him. So he sold the whole thing. One time in this program, we will bring out the English version of that agreement that Biya signed in 2009. And he signed it for France to control La République du Cameroun and the Cameroons, including the British Cameroon, till the end of this century. They are hoping that by then, all of us, everybody would have been dead, and the children born who would be alive then would not even understand what's going on, and they would just allow the French to continue stealing the resources. But I want to assure us, the French will not continue stealing our resources. France has trouble now. This very year, they have had more than 4 prime ministers. Their government is crumbling. France is heavily indebted. They are now like the sick man of Europe economically. So just like Greece owed a lot and was in economic crisis, France is the next European country in economic crisis. In fact, it's reached a point where the Germans are figuring out how they can take care of themselves without allowing France to pull them down. And France will fall. Not only that, all those collaborators that are collaborating to destroy us, to destroy the children that God created in his image, they will all collapse. Yes, anybody collaborating with these thieves, those who steal, tell lies, and cheat constantly, they will all lose it. And our people will be liberated and actualize their God-given potentials and enjoy life to its fullest. And that is coming. That is a certainty, I can guarantee you. No so-called religious leader like Nkea putting on a camouflage religious dress, going around blessing bosses in Bamenda and other places, can deceive you while working for open daylight thieves, people who tell lies in broad daylight and double down on it and kill, and their level of criminality and wrongdoing can never come to an end. They will do even worse than that, to the point where they will start killing themselves and doing to themselves what they do to other people's children. But our people will come through and they will emerge. Even the Francophones will also come through. They don't have the spine like we do. We are able to endure 9 full years of constant ghost towns every week to remind them that we disagree with what they have done to us and what they are doing with us. But the Francophones are not able to endure even 3 days. But even then, they will have the opportunity and they will be free as well from these thieves. They will not continue forever. Just as France will go down and their collaborators, these people must and will go down. And the people, our people, will emerge and be very strong and be very successful in their endeavors and enjoy their lives to the fullest. I will stop here today. This is the program I wanted to share with you. We'll find another time and bring out the agreements that Biya signed with the French in 2009. And we'll read the full details for you to realize that that man has betrayed that country, and the French have allowed him to steal everything and hide it in Switzerland, in the French portion of Switzerland, Geneva. Thank you very much.
In this conference room this morning are representatives of both points of view. One of them is Prime Minister Ahmed Ahidjo of the French Cameroons. He has brought his interpreter with him this morning. I'm going to ask the question, and the interpreter will in turn ask Dr. Ahidjo. Would you give us your view on the problem which is currently before the General Assembly, sir?
Est-ce que, Monsieur le Président, vous voudriez leur donner votre point de vue au sujet du problème qui, à l'heure actuelle, est débattu par l'Assemblée générale?
Actuellement, il est question des deux Cameroun, sous tutelle française et britannique. Bien entendu, je suis les deux questions avec une grande attention, mais l'on comprendra que j'attache l'importance primordiale à la question du Cameroun français. Des résolutions sont déposées sur le bureau de la 4e commission et la commission déposée par les États-Unis, Haïti, l'Italie et d'autres nations ont reçu notre adhésion. Et j'ai l'espoir que cette résolution sera votée par la 4e commission et par l'Assemblée générale.
The Prime Minister says that, of course, he is here to follow the debate on both the French and British Cameroons, but it is understandable that he's more interested in the fate of the French Cameroons, of which he is the Prime Minister. And he says that various resolutions have been submitted to the 4th Committee, and he hopes that the resolution submitted by 5 nations, including the United States and Italy and Haiti, New Zealand, will receive the majority vote in the 4th Committee.
Thank you very much, sir. Another very important voice to be heard from is Prime Minister J.N. Fanshawe of the British Cameroons. How do you feel about this situation, sir?
I wish to thank the members of the United Nations television branch for having given me this opportunity to express my impression of the United Nations General Assembly convened purposely to hear Cameroon's future. Before I leave for the southern Cameroons, I wish to express my deepest appreciation for the kind and friendly dispositions of everyone I have met at the United Nations. This opportunity has given me to thank them all, not only for myself but also for my honorable colleagues. The friendly atmosphere which characterizes the day-to-day business of the United Nations is in itself a contributing factor to the solution of the problems confronting the countries of the world. The solution of the difficulties delaying the progress of independence to the Cameroons as a whole has made good progress in view of the fact that the distinguished representatives are understanding what we want. The consideration to postpone some of the points presenting difficulty is a move in the right direction in view of the fact that before the 14th session assembles, more important information will be available. The course of the debate so far is encouraging because it is aiming to a kind of independence which will pave the way to the unity of Cameroon as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both, gentlemen. Cameroons, also in Western Africa, attached to...